doubled. Authorities have been made to recall doses from rural areas because they don't have enough, nearly enough rather, to fight outbreaks in big cities. President Yoweri Museveni has responded to the rise in cases by imposing restrictions on travel within the country. So far, the East African nation has reported more than 55,000 infections and 392 deaths. This according to Johns Hopkins University.
The situation is dire. We are officially having what we would refer to as a second COVID wave. So we are admitting lots of patients who are critically ill. First of all, there's the rate of number of cases that we are registering per day is going higher and higher. I think as per last week, I hope I have the stats right, but probably 1,000 patients tested positive.
The demand for the vaccine has more than doubled following this upsurge in the number of cases reported. And also we are almost completing the 94,000 doses we received both from the COVAX facility and also the Indian government, 100,000 doses.
Well, the Africa CDC and the MasterCard Foundation have launched an initiative to boost the COVID-19 response on the continent. The partnership aims to acquire vaccines for 50 million people and lay the groundwork for vaccine manufacturing in Africa. CGTN's Chala has the details.
Saving lives and livelihoods is an initiative of the African Union that was launched to safeguard African states and their citizens from the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. And together with the MasterCard Foundation, the African Union and Africa CDC have unveiled a plan of partnership for COVID-19 vaccination in Africa.
Lives are going to be saved through the vaccine purchases. Second, there is a commitment to work directly with our public health institutions and make them stronger. Creating parallel systems has not been effective or sustainable. Third, there is a long-term vision to build Africa's capacity to produce high-quality medicines and vaccines right here on our continent.
President Paul Kagame, who is the African Union champion for domestic health financing, however, said Africa needs to also explore ways of local investment for effective combat against the pandemic.
We want to get out of this crisis with a business as usual mindset. That means investing much more of our own domestic resources in our national health systems. The African Union Commission and the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, have technical resources to assist member states with this priority.
Currently, the African Union, through the continent's Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, is working round the clock to manufacture COVID-19 vaccines within the continent. And the kind of partnerships being made, such as with that of Canada's MasterCard Foundation, is playing a key role in making the continental plan a reality. Grumtara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, India has reported the world's highest single-day death toll from COVID-19. The country on Thursday reported more than 6,100 deaths after a large eastern state revised up its toll. The state of Bihar made the change to account for people who died at home or in private hospitals. The previous highest daily toll was more than 5,400, recorded by the United States in February. India also reported 94,000 new cases, which brings its total caseload to over 29 million. Meanwhile, Japan is ramping up efforts to vaccinate people ahead of next month's Tokyo Olympics. Local reports say people under 65 will be able to receive a vaccine at 2 state-run mass inoculation centers in Tokyo and Osaka. Prime Minister Suga says all residents wishing to get vaccinated will be able to get their shots by November. Japan has struggled with a sluggish vaccine rollout, and only about 4% of its population is fully vaccinated. Despite widespread opposition to holding the Tokyo Olympics, officials say the Games will go ahead as planned. Well, Malaysia is battling a huge second wave of the virus. Health authorities have raised concerns about a growing number of deaths and serious cases in children. Our correspondent RIAN MAELZER has more from Kuala Lumpur.
Well, actually, the number of new cases has dropped a little bit since its peak at the beginning of the month, but what we have seen are some worrying trends nonetheless. We're seeing record numbers of people in the intensive care units, record numbers on ventilators, and that's only increasing every day. And we're told that the intensive care units are actually beyond capacity, despite Malaysia roping in private hospitals and expanding its intensive care units. People with serious COVID are having to be treated in ordinary wards, although there's no indication at this stage of any shortages of either oxygen or ventilators. We're also seeing the average number of deaths each day, although down from a peak of a few days ago, they're still averaging 3 times higher than they were just a month ago. And Malaysia's commendably low mortality rate has crept up from the beginning of May by 35%. We're also seeing a different profile to a degree of those who are dying. We're seeing more younger people with no comorbidities dying. We're also seeing this worrying incidence every day of people being brought in dead, dying in their homes and then being brought into hospital. And this is not happening just in remote rural areas. This is happening on a daily basis right here in the greater Kuala Lumpur area. And there may be a couple of reasons why we're seeing these phenomena occurring. Number one is that in the early months of the pandemic, until the surge in the early part of this year, everyone who tested positive for COVID-19, even if they were young, healthy, and asymptomatic, they were all admitted to hospital and isolated. But they haven't been able to do that since the surge in cases. So more people are self-isolating at home. As well, we're finding out that these variants of concern, particularly the beta variant that was first identified in South Africa, seem to be spreading widely here. And we're told by the Ministry of Health these variants are not only more contagious, they also jump into people's lungs more rapidly, sometimes without people even having fever. So they may be coming to hospital, and they are coming to hospital in a more advanced stage of illness, or they may take sudden turns for the worse at home, and that's why we're seeing more deaths in the homes.
South Africa has struggled to get smokers to kick the habit for decades, but a strict cigarette sales ban during the first 5 months of the COVID-19 lockdown may have done the trick. One major retailer is continuing to see a slump in sales, despite the ban being lifted for close to a year. CGTN's Julie Shire has more.
South Africa has around 8 million smokers, according to a study by the University of Cape Town's Economics of Exercisable Products Research Unit. An estimated 1 million quit when tobacco products were banned during the COVID-19 hard lockdown last year. Between 25% and 50% of people have since relapsed, but the decline is still significant.
The most important reason for people wanting to quit smoking was the price of cigarettes. They said that the price of cigarettes had increased substantially, and prices more than tripled during this time period. Another 14% indicated that they were unable to find cigarettes during that time period. 11% of respondents indicated that they wanted to obey the regulations.
A shift towards cheaper or illicit brands also put pressure on sales, adding to an overall slump.
The total market is probably about 5% less because of people quitting, and some people have actually cutting back on their consumption. But what we also see is that some people have actually moved away from, let's call it, traditional brands to cheaper brands that they might have gotten used to during the lockdown period.
Bad news for the economy, but good news for the population. Smoking costs the country around $3 billion annually, almost 1% of GDP. Over 44,000 people die from smoking-related diseases every year.
In treating tobacco disease, in lost productivity when people do get sick, and also from premature deaths. So definitely it does cost our economy a lot of money. So when people actually stop smoking, we have a more healthier nation, we have a healthier workforce, and we also have people saving money.
Government is hoping to reduce smoking rates further and create healthier lifestyles. It's pushing for tougher laws, which largely prohibit smoking in public places.
The biggest impact that we get from people who want to quit is if the excise tax increases, if the price goes up, and if cigarettes become less affordable. Unfortunately, South Africa currently has a problem with illicit trade.
At least 30% of cigarettes on the market are illegally manufactured and sold, which could hamper efforts to reduce smoking rates. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta is calling for those operating in the illegal manufacture of guns to join the government firearms factory. The factory was opened in April to cut the cost of acquiring weapons for security forces. Uhuru made the remarks as he led security agencies in destroying over 5,000 illicit firearms recovered in 2020. The guns that were destroyed are part of 14,000 illegal weapons confiscated over the last 2 years. The president said Kenya seeks to enhance its self-reliance in security through local production and equipment technologies. Homemade guns have been linked to various crimes committed in the country, including murder.
The task of a peaceful and secure Kenya is a responsibility of each and every Kenyan. And I urge you all, in your own roles and space, to make a conscientious effort to make our country, our republic, more safe and more secure and 100% free of illegal weapons.
Coming up in your business news. Zimbabwe's finance minister projects an optimistic 7.8% growth rate this year. And Nigeria requires social media companies operating in the country to register a local entity.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
In your business news, Zimbabwe's Finance Minister MTHULI has far outstripped international expectations as far as economic growth projections go for his country. The minister sees Zimbabwe growing by just under 8% this year, which is more than twice the 3.1% that the International Monetary Fund projected. He told the AFP news agency that his optimism is supported by the country coming off a low base and its economic reforms have started bearing fruit.
Economy is fixable. We are fixing it. Just check our track record in the last 2.5 years. The government has introduced a new currency, which didn't exist before. Every country needs its own currency so as to have monetary policy to supplement what's happening on the fiscal side. We have been managed to balance the budget. We have begun payments, token payments to the World Bank and the AFDB and the European Investment. We have started. We've also expressed that we desire to begin payments, no matter how small, to the 17 Paris Club members that Zimbabwe owes money. We want Zimbabwe to be known as a good debtor, not a bad debtor.
Social media firms that want to operate in Nigeria must register a local entity and be licensed. The country's Information Minister Lai Mohammed said the new regulations will also include conditions for continued operation. Mohammed made the announcement on Wednesday in the government's latest move since it banned Twitter last week. Nigeria suspended Twitter's activities 2 days after the platform removed a tweet by President Muhammadu Buhari that threatened to punish secessionists. Nigerian telecoms firms have since blocked access to the social media giant. The move comes amidst what critics say is a broader crackdown on freedom of expression.
I think first and foremost, like I said, Twitter must register as a company in Nigeria. It must be licensed by the Broadcasting Commission, which is the regulatory agency, and must agree not allow its platform to be used by those who are promoting activities that are inimical to the corporate existence of Nigeria. We are not just banning Twitter because Twitter has been nasty to a particular person. No. We gave a specific reason. Twitter has continued to become the platform of choice for the separatist movement, IPOB. And we think that no country in the world will accept that.
Well, the Biden administration has reversed a Trump-era attempt to ban two popular Chinese-owned apps, namely TikTok and WeChat. The apps were never actually blocked in the U.S. due to legal challenges, but efforts to keep them off American gadgets exacerbated tensions between the two countries. CGTN's Roy Ruttenberg has more.
TikTok has nearly 700 million monthly average users worldwide. The company says more than 100 million of them are here in the United States. The short video sharing app, known for its viral challenges, is very popular with young smartphone users. Last September, and again in December, federal judges blocked a Trump administration effort to ban its download in the U.S., a challenge that's remained stuck in the courts. Then President Donald Trump had been trying to arm-twist TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance to sell its American operations to American firms, claiming its data harvesting posed a national security threat. So too, he argued, did WeChat, a messaging, networking, and e-commerce super app that's wildly popular in China and among the Chinese diaspora. On Wednesday, President Joe Biden revoked 3 of Trump's executive orders that targeted the apps, instead issuing his own order seeking to identify apps that could pose, quote, an unacceptable risk to U.S. national security and to the American people, and ordering federal agencies to develop new guidelines to protect the public's personal information. Trump's attempted ban was seen as part of a larger effort to confront China. Beijing denounced those moves and others. Biden's approach is seen as more down the middle. It creates windows for a review process and a timeline for new criteria, but keeps in place a possible sanctions mechanism and the demand for TikTok's divestiture. The announcement comes just 1 day after the U.S. Senate passed a bipartisan bill authorizing some $200 billion in funding for science, technology, and research to better compete with Chinese advances. Beijing reacted, saying the U.S. should not treat China as a, quote, imaginary enemy. The bill still needs to pass the lower U.S. House and then get signed by President Biden. Both are likely, though it's unclear what the bill will look like by then. Roy Ruttenberg, CGTN in Washington.
Well, China's Ministry of Commerce says the Biden administration's removal of bans on TikTok and WeChat is a positive step in the right direction. Gao Feng, the spokesperson for the ministry, made the remarks at a press conference earlier on Thursday. Gao also called for the fair treatment of Chinese companies by the U.S. government, adding the apps are still under inspection by the U.S. Committee on Foreign Investment. He further urged the U.S. government not to politicize economic and trade issues. The Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development says the Tunisian economy will expand at an annual rate of 3% in 2021 and 2022. In its latest economic outlook, the organization warns of coronavirus-related risks that could stifle the recovery of the country's vital tourism industry. From Tunis, here's Adnan Chouachi with the details.
Tunisia is hoping to jumpstart its economic recovery after a sharp decline in 2020 caused by the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. The country's Economy, Finance and Investment Development Minister said the government is optimistic about post-pandemic recovery this year and in 2022, buoyed by rising inoculations in the world.
جائحة الكوفيد The repercussions of the COVID-19 pandemic will continue and affect more businesses and sectors. It's weakened the government's financial means and affected the population. However, GDP is projected to expand next year after a sharp decline amid the health crisis. The situation will certainly improve in the next few months.
The Paris-based Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, said the labor-intensive services sectors are critical for Tunisia's recovery. Authorities in Tunis have already launched an online platform to support the most vulnerable groups and people who have lost their jobs during the pandemic. The number of recipients is about 1.2 million families.
Our aim is to boost the national economy by supporting individuals whose businesses and earnings were affected. This exceptional relief fund will finance household incomes and increase private consumption. This initiative is in line with the state's economic relief program during and after the pandemic.
The OECD report stressed that the tourism sector is one of the most affected sectors by the health crisis. The North African nation's tourism revenues plunged 55% during the first 4 months of 2021 compared to the same period in 2020. Experts say the national vaccination drive will revive this vital industry and create new jobs.
Tourism is completely devastated due to travel restrictions, lockdowns and layoffs. Now that the vaccination campaign is underway, hotels are reopening and hiring. We do not expect 100% of tourist resorts to be operational this year, but tourism revival will boost the economy and contribute to GDP growth in the next season.
Ratings agency Standard & Poor's expects a modest recovery of 3.8% in 2021 after last year's sharp GDP contraction. The fund has, however, warned that Tunisia's debt to GDP is forecast to grow to 91.2% this year from 87.6% in 2020. According to the National Institute of Statistics, Tunisia's weak economy has been hit hard by the pandemic, with GDP contracting 8.8% last year. Authorities aim to improve the investment climate and boost exports while bringing the health crisis under control. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
South Africa is seeking additional electricity from private contractors as the government moves to address long-standing power outages. The country has been experiencing rolling blackouts in recent months due to additional breakdowns at several power stations. CGTN's Angela Coppola has more.
The government's latest drive to bolster the country's electricity grid is to increase the amount of renewable energy. But not everyone's convinced that this is the best approach, which leaves coal and nuclear.
Now, when I say coal, I'm not talking about Eskom-style coal, which is the filthiest coal generation probably in the world. I'm talking about clean coal, like you would find when you go to London and Boston and the first world countries, where you could stand right next to a power station and not even know it, other than for a slight vibration in the ground maybe from the turbines turning.
Eskom's current solar power suppliers' prices are higher than Eskom can legally charge its clients, and that leaves the utility with a problem.
Solar is very, very weak in winter, and even on average, it's only 4 hours of solar available per day. And most of our activities, our needs, are during the morning peak and during the afternoon peak. So, yes, solar might help out a little bit during the day, but all it does is actually push up Eskom's costs because they have to buy the solar, and they're not getting any revenue for the coal or other energy that they generate during the day.
Eskom and the Energy Department are also considering a more immediate option, approaching existing independent energy suppliers to increase their production.
But the fact of the matter is that the government and Eskom have treated suppliers so badly in the past. I mean, I've got a client who's a hydro supplier. He only does 1 or 2 or 3 megawatts. It's not a lot of power, but it certainly can help patch a hole. And these people have been so badly treated, both on and off decisions, and having them rush and prepare the installations and then not draw down on them, that I think that the sentiment towards government and Eskom is that we don't trust you, and you are too corrupted and you're unreliable as a partner.
As South Africa moves into that winter season, Eskom is hard-pressed to help consumers meet their electricity needs, and it's unlikely to do so anytime soon. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
You're watching Africa Live. Time now for a short break.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Let's go to Tunisia now, where environmental activists are building artificial reefs to restore marine life in damaged areas of the sea. CGTN's Joy Kirukijuma brings us the story of how this ancient practice is making a comeback on Tunisian shores.
The Notre Grand Bleu Association was created in 2012 by a group of Tunisian divers. Their aim was to preserve and create a sustainable marine environment.
Because of pollution, climatic change and many other man-made factors, we found many places in our sea that were abandoned and became barren places without life. So we decided, as Notre Grand Bleu Association, to do this initiative of making artificial reefs from palms to restore life to arid places.
Artificial reefs are made from palm tree branches fixed with concrete on the seafloor to boost fish populations. They're now being installed in the Tunisian coastal city of Monastir.
As we see here, these reefs are made mainly of concrete with holes so that we can put the palm branches into them, and then we tie it with a thread made of alpha plant, which is a 100% natural product, in order to preserve the environment in the long run.
Many reefs are built by repurposing objects, for example, by sinking oil rigs, scuttling ships, and many other ways.
As for this method, it's old. Our ancestors used to use it. After the harvest season, they used to throw palm groves into the sea because it's considered as a hideout for hatching fish, especially squid. Despite the abundance of production at the time, they were thinking about sustainability and the future. We are now exposed to many problems, especially marine pollution. So we wanted to return this old technique that our ancestors used and are looking for places that have been affected by pollution, and we are trying to restore its life with these artificial reefs that represent an artificial and ecological hideout to protect the biodiversity in our sea.
Despite being an ancient method of preserving marine life, conservationists hope that the practice will continue to be used for the sake of sea life. Joy Kirukijuma, CGTN.
A farming initiative in northern Ethiopia is helping push against the negative effects of climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic. It's educating the community on ways to reduce gully erosion and, in return, creating local jobs. This means people can stay close to home and reduce their exposure to the coronavirus.
In the highlands of Ethiopia, a community in the northern Amhara region is repairing and reinforcing irrigation gullies. The area used to be covered by farms, but heavy flooding has washed away the soil, leaving farmers with less food to sell and feed their families with. The gullies are part of an irrigation system that directs the rainwater and traps soil.
This work is about maintaining the gullies. First, we collect and prepare the stones. Then we dig into the ground, and then we put in the gabions.
These farmers work for Rural Poor Stimulus Facility, which was set up by the International Fund for Agricultural Development. It supports rural communities whose livelihoods were severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic.
The money we earn here has changed our lives. If you want to know, firstly, we are now able to buy sheep for the Easter festival. Secondly, we can now eat eggs as we are rearing chicken. And thirdly, we have the capacity to buy clothes for our kids, and we are living without a worry.
Before, farmers had to travel to other areas to find work. Now, local jobs mean they can stay close to home, reducing their exposure to the coronavirus.
The benefit of our work for this community is that we are helping to save the environment from soil erosion, and the youth from the community are getting employment and earning income to cover expenses.
The project's organizers hope that the combination of a simple solution, community involvement, and food security will help people here survive these global challenges. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
And coming up in your sports news, up next. South Africa's Kuala overcomes trauma to push for Paralympic glory.